Okay, we'll officially start. Hello, my name is Ken Stellan. I'm an EVP and partner with FPG. I'll be the moderator of today's session, 3 proven techniques for limited full service hotels that you can implement now to restore your revenue throughout the recovery period with zero investment. I'm excited today. I'm here with my colleagues today. We have Matt Pietzak, who is one of our executive directors, who is based in Orlando. Matt, how are you?
Good. Excited.
Very good. Matt will be the main presenter. Matt is based in Orlando at our head office, and Matt has over almost 11 years of experience with FPG, but many more years of experience in service-based sales and revenue management prior to joining us. We have one of our newer team members, David Jarvis. David Jarvis is based in Singapore. David, how are you?
Good, thanks, Ken. Awake.
Awake. All right, very good. David led me there. David is the managing director of TSA, which is now an FPG company. We've joined forces earlier this year, and David comes to us close to 20 years of ancillary sales experience, leadership experience in the hospitality world. And as David said, I think it's almost 2 a.m. your time in Singapore.
It is indeed.
So David, thank you very much for that. We appreciate
Cheers,
that.
Ken.
And we're also privileged here. We have Joffrey Tofetti. Joff is our CEO of FPG. He's coming pretty close to your 10th year now, Joff?
Yeah, 10th year.
Wow, that's amazing. So Joff has been with us for 10 years. And prior to FPG, he's worked in various leadership roles, but he started his formative years in hospitality. So myself, David, and Joff will be panelists, but Matt will be the main presenter. And before we jump in, this session was really designed in this climate, regardless of what type of property you are. Revenue, it's not a nice to have, it's a need to have through this recovery period. All of these techniques will positively impact your ADR, your RevPAR. They'll do that while also enhancing your guests' experience. And so Matt is going to tee it off here. He's going to go into the program. At the very end of it, we will allot time for questions and answers. I'll help administer that with my fellow panelists, but we'll turn it over to Matt. Thank you.
Awesome, Ken. Thanks so much. Yeah, as Ken was saying, this is really about maximizing incremental revenue right now, right? Occupancy levels just aren't where they used to be. So the name of the game right now is maximize your rate on every single room with every single guest that's coming through your doors. And there is a thought out there that if you're a limited service hotel, that you can't have a proper upsell program. So part of the day is also to dispel that belief, because no matter how big your property is, whether you're limited service, if you're a big box property or even a luxury property, these techniques will actually work regardless of your area. And speaking of which, here is just a quick view of some of our different partners out there. So if you find yourself, right now you might be at a limited service hotel, you might be tuning in from a big box property, let's say over 1,000 rooms, or a luxury property. But some of these concepts we're going to share, if you find yourself in the future at a different industry, right? A lot of these techniques can be applied, right? Just using these concepts, no matter where you find yourself in your career path. So just know that whether you're tuning in at a limited service property or watching this recording and you find yourself somewhere else in your career path, these techniques will work if you implement them right now. Speaking of just other industries, just wanted to kind of take a look at the landscape right now. In a recent study, we uncovered that 16% of the workforce is actively disengaged. This means they're walking the hallways, spreading discontent, just very negative, and everyone knows who that person may or may not be when you've encountered them. Another 53% do not like their job. So they're just coming in to work, they're collecting a paycheck. They're gonna just give you the very bare minimum effort that they're able to get by with to still maintain their job, which leaves only 31% of your workforce is actively engaged, they're inspired, and they're tuning into your mission. So really what this means is you have 67% of the workforce that is apathetic or indifferent to your company's mission. They don't care if you win or if you lose. They just want to make sure that their paycheck shows up on time. And as long as that happens, they're okay with their role. So really what we're looking to do is really transform that landscape. And really by implementing these 3 techniques we're about to cover, we're hoping to tap into not only the revenue and the guest experience, but tap into that discretionary effort of your front desk or your frontline associates and move them into a 96% of your workforce being engaged. So that being said, let's go ahead and get started with technique number 1. Now, this one might seem pretty obvious as it relates to an upsell program, but you have to communicate room inventory, right? Your team simply can't make an offer to enhance the guest experience if they don't know what to offer. So before I share our technique, here's a common pitfall or mistake that we see with a lot of our partners, which is just a make it happen approach. So you introduce to your team, hey, we're going to have an upsell program. We want you to enhance the guest experience when they check in. And, so please offer an upsell to them. But there's very little or to no guidance on what rooms are available, how to make that happen. And so therefore team members just spin their wheels and no revenue gets generated. So here's what we can do. We need to discuss available rooms during pre-shifts. So number 1, have pre-shifts if you're not already having those. And during those pre-shifts, you want to share which rooms that you have available that day. So this is going to be doing 2 things. Number 1 is you're communicating what rooms are available, and that's critical. Number 2, it's a constant reminder to your team that this is important and it's discussed daily as a mission that you guys are set out to accomplish. The next piece here, and this can happen even during your daily pre-shifts, but you need to communicate any pricing updates or changes throughout the day. So you might have a room that starts off at $79 in the morning, but due to scarcity and your revenue management team is informing you, hey, we're running out of rooms, that price might change to $99, or another room that goes from $139 to $200. So make sure that your team is aware of these constant shifts in your rate. That way they know what to be offering. And more importantly, as the demand's going up, you can really maximize that revenue on each and every room. Third one here is a very unique one, and this is creating inventory options. Not all hotels are created equal. And, I've partnered with a lot of properties in the past where, they just didn't think they had dynamic enough inventory to make offers or to have a viable upsell program. But what we found is just by going into their room in their property, we uncovered that on the east side of their hotel, they had some great views that overlooked like a pond and a woods, very just nice scenic view. And on the west side, that same room overlooked the parking lot. So in the revenue management system, these were just called, let's just say a D2 room, right? And you all know your alphabet soup as it relates to your revenue management system. So they didn't go in and create new inventory in the revenue management, but what they did is they just tried to enhance those guest experiences. So when they were checking in, they were offering guests that had reserved that D2 room the scenic view for a difference of $20 a night versus the other side of the hotel. So for the guests that said yes to that, enhanced experience with the view, they put them in those rooms. And then for guests that said no, they started filling the house on the other side of the hotel. And what they found was they were quickly monetizing a lot of these nice views at $20 a day. And just like that, their revenue started climbing in an upsell program. So just make sure that you're communicating that room inventory. And between each one of these, I'm just going to have a quick reflection moment. So as it relates to room inventory, just ask yourself, do your team members view your property as a menu of services to offer your guests? And are they aware of the price to do so? 2 very important things here. Let's move on to the next one. Goal setting. If you don't know your destination, you may never begin the journey. As it relates to setting goals, one of the common pitfalls that we see as it relates to an upsell program is a one-size-fits-all goal. This is where you sit down with an agent or all your agents and say, okay, your upsell goal for the month is $500 each or $1,000 each. This doesn't take into consideration who your top performers are, who your learning team members are, your brand new team members, et cetera. It's just one flat goal. So it really doesn't speak to that individual. So one of our recommended best practices as it relates to goal setting, number 1 is that you set a goal for each team member. But as it relates to agent goals, you need to make sure that that goal is unique to each team member. So when you're sitting down and having a conversation with that team member, understand their strengths, where they're going to excel, look at their prior month, what they're able to accomplish, and then really look to have a goal that really speaks to them. That being said, you need to make sure that you're sitting down with the team member and involving them in setting their goal. And there's a couple of key things to consider when you're doing that. The first one, just keep it simple, right? And what I mean by that, when you keep it simple, it could be as easy as just sharing with that team member, hey, let's just do one upsell per day, right? You just break it down to a very, very easy, digestible goal for them to achieve. The next piece here is you do want to try to stretch them a little bit. So if you're having a conversation with them and they think that they can do 4 room enhancements out of every 100 guests, just ask them, hey, I really think that you could probably get 5 or 6, and just really get their buy-in and try to understand whether or not they could push themselves a little bit further, right? And then ultimately through that conversation, you're going to gain that buy-in with them. And now that they have the goal, it's very simple and they're bought in, you're starting to tap into that discretionary effort that I was just, talking about at the very beginning and moving your team into that 96% of engaged. The last piece here is just make sure that after you set the goal with them, that you are tracking it and following up with them. So a lot of our partners, we have an application that they can log into as an individual, and they can see their individual performance to see how they're progressing throughout the month. But if you're just tracking something on your own, it's very important that you're following up with your team member. There's a leader out there, his name's John Maxwell. He's written a lot of books. And one of his quotes that I absolutely love is, people don't care about how much you know until you show them how much you care. And when you're following up with your frontline associates and asking them how they're doing and sharing with them how they're progressing towards their goal, you're showing them that you have a vested interest in their success, that you care about them achieving that goal. And once again, when you're showing them that you care, now you're on that path to tapping into that discretionary effort. The next piece here is just team goals. You got to make sure you have a team goal out there. In generating that goal, make sure that it's realistic. Number one, you don't want to just set a goal of $1 million just because it sounds nice. Look at your property, look at your occupied rooms, set a realistic goal. And then the next piece here is just make sure that your team knows what that goal is. So post it somewhere, right? Somewhere in the back office, an email, anything like that can help. Once again, our partners through the application, when team members are logging in, both leaders and frontline associates, they're able to see right as soon as they log in, not only their own individual performance, but they can see where their overall team goals at. But it's very important when you're goal setting that you're posting not only the individual goals, but the team goals as well. So when we're having our reflection statement here, we just want to make sure that all frontline members have a unique goal that they're striving to achieve each month, and that goal has been communicated. Those are two very, very important things. So let's move on to the last one here, creating an incentive plan. Proper incentive plan will not only drive revenue, it's going to tap into that discretionary effort that I was talking about. And if we were in a lecture hall right now, I would probably ask everybody to raise your hand or stand up if you're having an easy time hiring good help right now. And I would guess that there wouldn't be that many hands that would go up or that many people that would stand up, right? It's a challenging environment right now in the labor market to attract good people to come work for you. So a good incentive plan can help you do that. But let's talk about some of the pitfalls that we see out there when we're looking at upsell programs. The first pitfall is just that there is a flat incentive plan, right? Everybody's paid the same amount. Let's say 5% across the board. So no matter how good you do during the month, you get paid out a 5% bonus. Or there's incorrect tiers, meaning that it's not that exciting, right? It's a 3-tiered 2%, 4%, 6%, and those are the hurdles that team members get to, get paid out on. So the maximum payout is 6%. Ultimately, that's not going to excite or activate that frontline team. So our recommended best practices, number one, is you have to make sure it's rewarding. And for us, our recommendation is a three-tiered approach. It shows it starts at 5%, moves to 10, with the top tier payout being 15%. Meaning if someone generated $2,200 in a month in upsell revenue, they could be generating $341 in bonus. That is significant money to your individual team members, where that could help them offset a couple of utility bills, that could help offset a car payment. This is meaningful money to your team. So when you're setting your incentive plan, just make sure that it is extremely rewarding to your team members. And when it's really rewarding, you're going to find that they're going to go for it. They're going to try and get into that top tier. The next piece here is we have to make sure that it's challenging. So you have to create the right runway when establishing these hurdles. You don't want to just have it go from 0 to 100, 100 to 200, anything over 300 gets paid out the top tier. They're not going to be, number one, that bought in to really the tiers themselves. They're going to know that they can easily get into that top tier. And sometimes some team members, when they get to the top tier, they're just excited that they made it, and they might take their foot off the gas a little bit. And the next piece here is that when you are setting these tiers, you have to monitor the agent results, meaning that if everybody does start moving into that top tier, make sure that you adjust your tiers accordingly, right? So if everybody all of a sudden is generating $2,000 a month in upsell revenue and getting paid out 15%, that might be the time to start adjusting your tiers, because ultimately a good incentive plan will have a nice bell-shaped curve where you'll have a sprinkle of team members in the bottom tier, another tranche of team members in the middle, and it'll lean a little top heavy towards the top tier. And then you'll have another set of team members getting that maximum payout. Now, if you're doing all of these, just starting with these three techniques, especially as it relates towards the upsell program, you are going to be on your way to tapping into discretionary effort of your team. And when you do that, you're going to have some elite performers out there. So how do you handle them? Well, one of the things that you can do is have a super tier out there, right? You could set a tier of $5,000 and share with those team members, hey, anything over 5,000, I'll pay you out 20% for every dollar over 5,000. So number one, they're already excited because they've already banked $750, right? 5,000 getting paid out at 15%. Now they know they get 20 cents on every dollar over 5K. So even if there's only 5 days left in the month, you're going to find that these elite performers are going to be charging hard to maximize your revenue just to tap into that 20% offering that you have. Another great thing that you can do if you didn't want to have that super tier out there is have a recognition event. Now, what we've seen with some properties, they'll have like a 5K club, right? And this means that if you generate 5K in a month, you get to go out to dinner with your GM and maybe your leader. I was very fortunate once to be in town with one of our partners when they were having a recognition event, and they invited me to go to dinner with them. And I sat down to one of the frontline associates or sat next to him, and she was like, just in shock. She's in New Orleans, and she said, so I can order anything I want on this menu? And, GM, yes, of course you can. And she was just so excited. And she shared with me that, hey, last month I just missed this event by like $500, and I made a commitment to myself that I was not going to miss it this month, right? So when I'm talking about discretionary effort, think about this team member. The next morning when she came into work, do you think she was more engaged or less engaged than she was, when she first got hired, right? So these are the things that we're talking about, taps into that discretionary effort. And then beyond that, that's where you start getting into the revenue aspect. Here's another example of one of our other partners. They had an annualized event in New York where the GM got up and spoke to them about everything that they were able to accomplish over the year. So not only can you have recognition events that last, on a monthly basis, you can have an analyzed event where team members can really understand what an impact they made to the overall property's success. And in this case, they handed out certificates and everything else. I mean, it was just a well done kind of year-end wrap up, and team members were talking about this for months afterwards. So lastly, as we look back at technique number 3, just ask yourself, do we have an incentive plan that can attract top talent, and can it make an annualized impact on their life? Meaning, is their W-2 going to be significantly impacted by your incentive plan? Here's a couple other just honorable mentions that I kind of hinted to a little bit throughout the presentation. But if you implement a leaderboard, to make sure people are getting updated on their results, you can do this through spreadsheets. You can do this using a dry erase board. For our partners, once again, they just have an application, so they can log right in. They can see where their results are at at any given day or any given month. And then you also got to recognize your top performers. So on our app, there's a little icon here where, hey, great performance so far this month. You're crushing your goals. Keep up the great work. But if you don't have an application like that, something very simple you can do is just send an email out recognizing your top performers who did well the previous day, previous week. Or you could have like a weekly cup of coffee with a team member. And I'll give you an example of this where, a good GM would go up to a team member and say, hey, can I buy you a cup of coffee, right? That's what a really good GM would do with a top performer to recognize them. What some of the very best GMs do is they'll go up to that team member and they'll say, hey, I saw that you've been having a really good week. Do you mind if I buy you a cup of coffee tomorrow? I'd really love to sit down with you and pick your brain about what you're finding success with and hear a little bit about what you're hearing from our guests. What this is going to allow that frontline associate to do is go home and talk to their significant other and friends and family and share with them that the GM wants to meet with them and buy them a cup of coffee and they get to share their opinion, right? Their team's going to tell them how, or their family's going to tell them how proud they are of them, right? They're going to rally behind them. You don't get that at a lot of different employers out there. People just don't care about you. Man, it sounds like you really found yourself a great home to work for. And this is what I mean when we're trying to tap into that discretionary effort and activate and get to that 96% engagement. These are the types of things that can really make the difference. And when you're doing that, ultimately, that's where you're really tapping into that revenue that is very, very critical to your business right now. So I'm going to turn this over to Ken, who's been monitoring some of the chat and the questions coming in. So Ken, I'm going to turn this back over to you, and hopefully we have a few questions out there.
Yeah, great, Matt. Thanks. We had some questions come through the chat, and we also had some come through Discover at Frontline PG. So here's one from one of our West Coast participant in the US. We'll give this to either Joff or David. Matt, we'll give you a few moments off. Take a breather. Nice job, though. The question is this: how do you offer enhancements to loyalty guests? Joff, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. Hello, everyone. I'm Joffrey Tafetti. As Ken introduced me in the beginning, I'm the CEO of FPG. This is a great question, and it's one that comes up quite a bit. It can certainly be tricky, but our approach is to emphasize a couple of key things. And most importantly is what the guest has earned, and then share options in which that experience that they've already earned can be improved. So it's critical when dealing with loyalty guests that, first of all, they receive a heartfelt thank you for being a loyalty member, that they clearly understand that they have received what they're entitled to. You don't want the guest standing there wondering if the room they're in was in fact an upgrade, if that's what they're entitled to. And then be able to offer them additional paid enhancements that could further enhance their experience, whether it be add-on ancillary services or even a larger room if they're traveling with their family and so on. So make sure that they feel thanked, make sure they understand what they've already received, and then offer them other options to enhance their stay further.
Thank you, Joff.
And Ken, is it okay if I add a little
Please.
bit to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
So I completely agree with what Joff said. And in addition, outside of making sure that, of course, they're extended their entitled benefits, one thing I would encourage, I've seen many partners that do entitled benefits significantly prior to arrival. By doing that, you often remove inventory options that are available to other guests, and not just to be sold at the front desk, but through any distribution channel. So entitled benefits absolutely should be delivered. They should be shared, but let's do them at the right time so that you can optimize your experiences that you have available to you. Secondly, how do you position it? Joff talked about why this is incremental to the benefits that you've already got. When you're looking at how to price that, make sure that you're only doing the price as an increment from their benefit, not looking at it from their original booked room type. But they're loyal guests. They're still looking for the best experience that's most appropriate for their stay.
Great. Thank you, David. Matt, do you want to add one piece to that?
Yeah, I would just say, and this kind of echoes a little bit of what Joff was saying, but just make sure that your team is educated on the loyalty program so that they understand each and every tier and what each tier does or does not get, right? A lot of times a team member will just see an entry level loyalty guest and think that, okay, hey, they get our presidential suite, right? So it's just more about making sure that you educate your team and feel free to even quiz them, right? That sometimes is a really good best practice.
Great. Thanks, Matt. So the next question, David, we'll give this to you because it actually comes in from our EMEA region. Should we still present to Priceline or Expedia guests? Should we still offer or present to Priceline or Expedia guests?
It's a great question. And I can understand why it's asked because of perceptions that we sometimes associate. What I'd say first and foremost, absolutely. This is something that we should be looking at. A customer that has found let's say most of the time through there, a better price to be able to come in and experience your property is happy that they've done that, and kudos to them that they've been able to find that and make their booking. But it doesn't put them into a bucket that they are cheap or that they are not wanting to look at other opportunities to further enhance their experience. Actually, almost the opposite. I've saved some money. I'm prepared to invest a little bit more if that's going to take my experience further. So, and the great thing is, Matt was talking about our platform and the ability to track. Statistically, we can see that the market segments of OTA, wholesale, discount market segments, these are some of the highest upsold market segments of them all. So the statistics validated, let's not judge them.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I would just add, in summary, the way that I've always thought about it is when travelers are booking through an OTA channel, they're looking to maximize value. But when they arrive at your hotel, the motivation is going to shift to maximizing their experience. So just keep that in mind.
Great, excellent. We have another question that just came in from one of our North American participants, and it is: most hotels are working with reduced staffing and managers, and the managers are manning the desk. So how do you recommend hoteliers implement a successful upsell program that is easy to maintain and doesn't take away from their core responsibilities? Joff, I bet you hear this a lot with a lot of our corporate partners. Do you want to address this one?
Yeah, sure. Another great question. So, educating guests on ways to optimize their experience at your property, it should never be optional, even at a reduced staffing level. Given the fact that you're at lower occupancies, the guest satisfaction, propensity to come back to your property, and ancillary spending have never been more critical. And a refined front desk revenue program doesn't add any material time to the check-in. So even if you're on reduced labor, it's not going to extend check-in times, but it will dramatically improve the guest service and the revenue outcomes. And we also find that when managers are working the desk, it's a great time to institutionalize a performance sales revenue mindset. And as the staff begins to come back in and the team begins to grow, they're entering an environment where it is an expectation that they're going to offer enhancements to guests and they're going to deliver that kind of service. So there's really no reason not to do it. In fact, it could be a huge contributor. Managers, quite frankly, should be able to produce a pretty significant amount of revenue. But yeah, so I wouldn't abandon it just because you have low staffing levels.
Right.
And to add to that, how good are the team going to feel that they're helping the hotel out of this difficult moment? And really, as Matt said, be able to see the contribution that they've made to that. So I'd say I'm going to repeat or summarize exactly what Matt has said that we should be considering. We need a really simple framework that the team can have as to how to positively engage a customer. Then we must be able to measure it and give visibility. Ideally, we want to be able to do that on a daily basis, but it's critical to give visibility to it. And then we must recognize. Matt talked about two key ways of doing that: incentivization and then acknowledgement. The power of acknowledgement is incredibly powerful. So don't just think of incentive, take the combination of the two. But I'm stealing from Matt. They're the key things that you need to put in place.
Great. Excellent.
And I just want to reemphasize 2 points that Joff brought up, or one specifically that's very critical, and that is dispelling the belief that having an upsell program requires more time, and therefore when you're busy, you shouldn't do it. When you're doing it right, it actually should make the check-in process even faster because you've communicated your inventory, your team members know how to offer, they know what to offer and at what price. It should be very fast, and your guest ultimately is going to have a better experience. So I just think that's a very important thing. The other thing I'd add to that is that, man, if your managers are out there and they are offering and they are generating extra revenue, well, guess what? They might have just afforded to hire some of that help that they so desperately need, right? So you can reinvest that revenue to get your labor back with revenue that you just didn't have before. So that I just wanted to add those pieces.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. Let's go to the fourth and final question. And it is from a participant in California. And the question is, with the growing popularity of contactless check-ins, how can hoteliers still capitalize on enhancing the guest experience? So David, why don't we turn this one over to David?
Yeah, well, thanks, Ken. I'm glad I get an opportunity to answer this because I've seen that many of our partners have introduced definitely contactless check-in, but also kiosks. And a number of them initially thought when this comes in, the opportunity is going to reduce. And I would say some of our own team members even had a concern about this element. But what we found is that guests that use this method usually are very au fait with what they want, often with the property. And so moving them away from the desk is actually advantageous for everyone. So the guests that are less familiar with the property and the experience actually gravitate to that opportunity to engage with a front desk team member on check-in, understand the potential experiences. And even though we're still advocating a very efficient check-in, we've now got less people interrupting the guest, and we can spend the time with the customer that's really looking for that experience and understanding. We've seen that also in the kiosk environment, that it's a great piece to have one of your team members actually available in that area so that they can still talk to the customer and talk about the enhanced experiences that are available and may be appropriate for them. But we've seen great upselling revenue results where kiosks are in place and obviously contactless check-in through mobile apps is reasonably significant now. Upselling continues.
Great. Thanks, David. Joff, what is your take on that?
Yeah, so I remember when the large brands started rolling this out and they were all coming to us for our opinion. And our initial opinion was, as David just described, it's going to purify the line down to the leisure travelers, the ones that probably would benefit most from an enhancement, and the road warriors would go to the applications. And that's pretty much what we've seen. The reality is there's always going to be guests who want a live service interaction. And, you know, as I said, while contactless check-in will appeal to those who are traveling all the time, the people that are traveling for pleasure or have never been to your environment before are probably going to want to go to the desk. And given the wide array of channels through which people book, there's always going to be a subset of guests who will engage at the front desk. We don't envision a day where a full service property or even a limited service property are going to have an automated front desk. It kind of takes the hospitality out of hospitality. And any guest who comes into the lobby, whether they go to a kiosk, as David said, or they come to the front desk, they don't necessarily know everything about your property, and they're going to appreciate being informed as to what is available to enhance their experience. So while it will change the dynamics a little, we still believe very strongly that a professional upsell program is going to be a major contributor to your operation.
Very good. Thank you, Joff. We have one more very quick question that came in. What is the name of the app that Matt is referring to? The name of the app is Engage, and it's FPG's proprietary app. Okay. And so in final closing, if you're interested in learning more, and of course, these questions, we'll still answer them. If you're watching this via a recording, which it will be distributed, you can contact us at discover@frontlinepg, and you can visit our website at frontlinepg.com. And the next session, we are doing a session for this for luxury properties as well, that the topics are geared toward the luxury segment. So thank you again to Matt for delivering the majority of the content and the two panelists. Thank you, gentlemen, and have a great day. Great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.